Many of you might know both of these individuals from a number of things. You can clap, go ahead. Many of you may know both of these individuals from their work not only within Atlanta and the technology space, but both of them were founding members of the Sales Leadership Society within TAG, and very instrumental in building what, again, is accommodating almost 200 attendees tonight. Super impressive, really exciting, and both guys are pretty dang smart. So we're gonna dive in a little deeper, ask them some questions on their definition of servant leadership, where they see and believe it to be a true guiding culture a true guiding value within the culture of their organization. And let's all lean in and see what we too can glean, gather, and learn from these two. So guys, how's it going?
Fantastic, glad to be here.
I'm just happy I'm sitting next to this guy. It's an honor to be on stage with you, man. So.
I know. I always like to tell this funny story just to break the ice, particularly with Kyle Porter. So he literally came up to me after an event early. Look at him laughing. And he said, so you went to Parkview High School? Anybody local? Woo woo. Okay, I did. But that was like 15 years previously. So I'm like, how do you know this? And I'm a little scared right now. But sure, I'll take a meeting with you because nobody else knew that. So it was super impressive. It was in his early days of sales, and it's been really awesome to watch him continue to grow and expand. Kyle Tuthill, as the CEO of eHire, has done some really amazing and instrumental things. He's also a big Auburn grad, and I know I got some War Damn Eagles in the house, right?
War Eagle.
Basketball or not, we're still War Eagles. That's okay. So now we'll dive into the meat of things. I would love to understand, starting with you, Kyle Tuthill, how do you define servant leadership?
Servant leadership is really a philosophy and a set of practices that help make other people better. That's kind of how I look at it. It's about making people better so that you can have sustainability in what you're trying to achieve. At our organization, we have a philosophy that we serve ourselves through serving others. And that philosophy allows us to put others first, and that actually really grows your business, as a matter of fact. But it also allows you to feel rewarded. You know, sales can be very transactional. Everybody in here humps it hard. If you don't, you probably don't belong in this room. It can be transactional, right? And when you have a mindset that you're here to make your customers better, you're here to make the people that work for you better, you're here to make your organization better, and overall, you're here to make your community better. I think that defines the mindset of servant leadership.
That's awesome. So, Kyle Porter, for you, understanding that SalesLoft has continued to get amazing recognition as one of the top places to work, one of the fastest growing companies, how do you continue to look at servant leadership as a core value and infuse it in your day-to-day into the culture?
You know, I remember it was 2002 and I had just walked into the computer lab at Georgia Tech, and I was talking to my dad on the phone, who is an incredible role model and someone that I deeply look up to. And I had also been through this dramatic change in my life where I just started to actually care about my future in a meaningful way. And he recommended, it was the first time I ever heard the words servant leadership. My dad said, you know, I'm gonna recommend a book for you, and it was a Peter Drucker book. And I remember I read it, and immediately I realized a word to represent my father. And I never knew, I just knew Dad, right? And I saw someone that, like Kyle said, that put others first. And, well, that thing really just turned on.
You're projecting that.
And so, you know, it was a wake-up moment for me, I believe. And then over time, you know, I failed miserably to enact the ideas from this book and from my dad over and over again, and had to learn those lessons myself. But, you know, I've started to think about the word a little differently, and now I actually, when I hear servant leadership, I almost think like it's redundant, because the role of a leader is to serve. And John Maxwell, you know, he says that in one of his books, and I remember when I read that, I kept repeating it, the role of a leader is to serve, the role of a leader is to serve. And so for me, that's, you know, just kind of the definition of the word. And, you know, certainly there's been times when I haven't heeded the maxim, but when we have, it's been the most rewarding.
That's awesome. So where I'd like to go with the conversation now is we talked a lot. Some may be familiar with this term of servant leadership. And Kyle, I love how you said to you, that's just leadership, right? It's almost like breathing. It's just innate. And that's not always the case, right? So there, you can say there are good leaders that know how to manage. There's not always good managers that know how to lead. And I think, again, those of us that have experienced it and had an opportunity to learn how to turn some of those around recognize that servant leadership probably is just that. It's like breathing because it's so much more productive. But
it's very hard to do. It's simple, but it's hard.
Yeah, well, tell me more.
It's like my friend John Birdsong, who's here. John once told me we were talking about Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence Others. And I'm of the belief that everyone might have read that book. But the things in there are just so critical to life. And John said something that was really cool. He said, that's an annual read for me. And I never heard anyone say that the book was an annual read for them. And then I read it again and I realized I know all this stuff, but I'm not doing it. Right? Like I could read that book and tomorrow do something that's outside of what I knew already and learned in the book. And it's so, you know these things and they're simple, but they're really, really hard as a discipline to practice on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, I think when you come up as a salesperson, you're really focused on your quota. You're really focused on your number, your money, what you're trying to accomplish, and you lose sight of serving a broader community and serving a broader set of people. And I think for me, it was a switch that flipped for me when I realized how big of an impact I was actually having on the people that I worked with. I was at a wedding of some J-Boss guys that I'd helped build this team that sold. It was an amazing story. And my wife didn't know any of these people because they weren't clients and we didn't go out. We went to this wedding and after a while she was like, do you know all these people? Like, what's the deal? I'm like, well, I introduced that person and they got married, blah, 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 and these great stories. And she's like, wow, you really have a big, big impact. And it kind of hit me that I had a huge responsibility, and what I did. And it just changed my mindset about what I did. And it allowed me to look and transition from a salesperson focused on myself and making deals to someone that was making an impact, and deals and money were just a result of what I was trying to do.
Yeah. Very well said. It reminds me of a scenario as a salesperson. You're like, oh, well, I always want to put my customer first, and if I can help my customer win and be a hero, then I can be the hero, right? And then you find yourself navigating into a leadership role where it's like, again, it's not about me, it's about you. And if I can help you hit your goals, I'm going to blow mine out of the water, whether I mean to or not. Why? Because you'll follow me off a cliff, or you'll drag me off the cliff with you as you jump to the next mountain. So it's super exciting when you kind of get that realization, right?
There's a saying that I heard, and it was talking about how individuals often say, after this job or after my career, I'm going to start getting involved in charity and nonprofits and giving my time, and I'm going to give back and do great things for others. And it was an author, what he said was, think about our days today and the people we lead and the impact we make on them. When we lead them the right way, they're going to go home tonight with their family or significant others or friends, and the way they felt in the day is going to be let out at that dinner table, right? And so while people think, I'm going to do so much, after I retire or in the future, you have such an opportunity right now to impact the lives of the people that you're involved in. And I think taking that on as that cause or as that purpose, really makes it meaningful now versus just stocking it up for later.
I agree with that. We live in the world's greatest economy in the history of mankind. We live in the best city that's doing unbelievable things. There's no better time to live in Atlanta, Georgia than literally April of 2019. And I ask myself, how's history going to judge what I did during this time? Did I make a lot of money? Did I go kill it? Did I retire somewhere? Or did I help make this system, this ecosystem better? And I try to extol that weight, that responsibility on myself and serve and lead through activities like this and other civic responsibilities, because who's going to do it if you don't? And everybody here is a really good salesperson, period. The end, right? And we, because we're so persuasive and so ambitious and so goal-oriented probably are uniquely suited to make the biggest impact because we know how to get things done. We know how to remove obstacles, make things happen. And for me, I'm happy about that because it allows us to really make a huge impact, right? Rather than maybe not having those skills.
So let's talk about that for a second, Kyle, because you bring up, and we both did, right, this natural, innate feeling. How do you really start to infuse that in the culture and the philosophy of the companies that you both run and the people that work for you as daily guiding values?
I think it starts with the selection of the people that you bring onto your journey. And David Cummings once said that as a founder or entrepreneur, and I think this extrapolates to leaders of teams, that the only thing that you have complete control of is the culture of your organization. And what that basically means is the direction you set, the values you place, and the people you let in and the people you let out. And so I think it starts with the people. And I was reminded of something that my friend Danny Meyer once said. Danny's a restaurateur. He's the founder of Union Square Restaurant Group, which has had the #1 restaurant in New York for like a decade straight. And he also founded Shake Shack. Has anyone had Shake Shack burgers? And what he said was, he looks for people of whom selflessness is a selfish trait to them, right? So being selfless, serving others, makes them feel good, and that's why they do it, because it's better for them. And so it kind of starts when you think about servant leadership, it starts with having the right people that have the same attitudes and share those same beliefs. And then you can set the guidelines around, here's the vision of where we're going to go, here's who we're going to be, here's how we're going to behave, here's how we're going to treat others. And I think those become really critical parts of it.
That's awesome. How about you, Kyle?
I think when you talk about DNA, it's a really big point of what someone's DNA is, and we're in the recruiting business, so we study that all the time. But Robert Greenleaf, who founded the Center for Servant Leadership, stated that leadership is natural. It's a calling that you have, and then you shape that into practices that help other people. And so I think when we take a look at who we try to bring into the organization, and everybody always knows when you'd make a bad hire. You can tell you knew it before you ever did it 99% of the time, because you failed to actually hold those competencies true and you make a mistake. But for us, our #1 core value, and it's on our walls and we live it every day, is community first. And that is a mindset for us and a mantra from us. And I infuse that, or we try to infuse that through doing it and through actually getting out and humping in and showing, the people that work for us, hey, you can do this. You can actually volunteer on this host committee. You can go raise money for this organization. You can go serve. And oh, by the way, if you do, you're going to be really happy. You're going to be very rewarded with what you do. You're going to have something else other than hitting your quota, right, to reward yourself with, something that's sustainable. And oh, by the way, you're going to end up working with a lot of really smart people that also care, that are also very bright, that are also leaning in, that are also very talented and gifted. And you're going to be highly networked, and more often than not, going to get some business out of it as well. So it's a complete strategy, for us.
Well, and the purpose has to be there. I just read, has anyone read the book Bad Blood? It's the Theranos story with Elizabeth Holmes. And I think most of you have heard the Theranos story, and it's pretty much a kind of a cautionary tale, if you will. And what I read in there, while I was reading it, I was just struck by the moral decisions that Elizabeth Holmes made. And when I got to thinking, I thought, it's not just that she was an immoral person, and she became that, and those behaviors reflected that, but it started with her purpose. And so when you talk about hiring and you talk about assembling the right team that can operate in these types of environments, I think purpose is so critical. Elizabeth Holmes didn't wake up a fraud. She wasn't born a fraud, but she did at a very early age decide that she wanted to be a billionaire, and that was the most important thing to her. And so that became the guiding principle for her in her business of Theranos as she started the company and began to cut corners. Ever so softly at first, right? Because that guiding principle was her purpose, to be a billionaire. And then the corners got sharper and sharper and sharper. And then she went down this slippery slope. And so while most people would read that book and say, oh, Elizabeth Holmes is a bad person, she has bad ethics, I would say Elizabeth Holmes had the wrong purpose. And having that purpose defined and clear within you and set in stone, and it can't be about financial wealth, and it can't be about material things from the very get-go, because if it's those things and you put that above anything else, then your honor, then your ethics, then your principles, and all those things take back seat. And so I think the purpose has to be clear for individuals to be part of an organization that leads in this way and operates in this way. And it's something that's important to me. And, it's taken me time to uncover that in myself. When you said leadership is innate, I recall being a freshman at the dorms or at the fraternity house at Georgia Tech, standing on the front steps, and one of the older brothers who was a senior, his name was Tyler King, he came up to me and he said, "I've been watching you and you're a leader. The question is, will you lead your people in the wrong direction or not?" And I was leading them in the wrong direction at that time, I never forgot that ever. And so I think it's just, where do you take it?
So Kyle, I love so much about what you just said. Particularly, I have an 11-year-old little boy who has very natural and obvious leadership qualities. And we do talk about it all the time. I said, do you want to be a good leader or do you want to be a bad leader? Because people are following you regardless. And luckily, and I don't even know as a parent if that was just work leading into family or what, but to stop and think with a servant leader's mind of how do I help you grow and become the best that you can be? So thank you for sharing that story with us about Georgia Tech. That's super exciting. I have one more question, and then we'll definitely open it up to the audience. So you all be thinking of what you'd like to know or what you'd like to have answered by these two. We talk a lot about the upside and the gain. And again, I appreciated the comment of having the wrong purpose and the wrong priorities. One of my leaders early on in my life taught me, if you stop chasing the money, you'll make more money than you ever imagined. And he was right. So with that being said, those are tough lessons, right? Those are tough conversations. Tell me about a time that you found yourself in a tough conversation, not only coming from a place of servant leadership, but maybe with someone that doesn't necessarily align with the culture or the fit of your organization.
Those conversations are pretty short, usually for me. No, I'm just kidding. But some people don't have that mindset, okay? And I think everybody here that's a sales manager or a leader has had one of those people that you've led into your garden. You've let a weed grow in your garden. And you have to figure out real quick how much time you're going to invest in this individual by examining their heart. And where's their head, and what are they actually really trying to accomplish? Do they have a long-term view about what they're trying to do, right? What are they actually trying to accomplish? And I think that's hard for particularly for some young people to kind of get their head around, which is natural. It's absolutely natural. But after a few years in the workforce, you ought to figure out kind of what you're trying to get, what you're going to be remembered by. If you think about having a conversation with somebody and saying things like, "Hey, look, if you were going to write your eulogy today, how would that look? How would the people sitting around your gravesite, what would they say about you?"
What's the dash, right? No,
I mean, who did you matter to?
Yeah.
And I think you can look at people pretty quickly and examine whether they're selfish or not. The question really is, are you willing to make the tough decision to move them out of your life? And that's really hard for a guy that's empathy meter is up here for me. I love everybody, and I'm a loving person. I make friends easy, and it's tough sometimes to tell people that you don't fit. You don't fit the culture, and it's my fault. So having those conversations is tough, but if you examine the heart and you get away from the quota and you get away from the numbers and the digits and all the things that are getting in the way of and probably creating that conversation to begin with, I think you can get to the truth pretty quickly.
That's awesome. Kyle, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I thought about a moment when you asked that question, and I'll give you a little background. I grew up fast in 2002 after being arrested for 2 times in college for partying too much. And
You got arrested at Tech for that?
I did, yeah, it was off campus, but I grew up pretty quick, and what happened was I started to solidify my purpose and realized that I had been given many gifts and talents, and I was squandering them away. And in fact, I was here to use them to serve others. And so when I started SalesLoft, I created the company with one purpose: to build an environment where others could come to learn more, to do more, to serve more, to take their talents and skills and use them to find fulfillment. And here I was 3 years into the business, And that was the reason that I was there in the first place. And I remember walking into the office, and because of the things that we had built and the actions we had taken, we had made LinkedIn really mad.
Really?
And so LinkedIn was mad at us. And so to fight back, they decided to remove everyone in the management team's LinkedIn profile. And I walked into the office, and I remember here I am trying to create an environment that will take these people's careers to the next level, but I'm actually stripping them of their professional profile. And it was this moment where I just felt like I was letting the entire organization down. And so, that really created a fuel to get past that challenge. We went to them and made an arrangement, and ended up canceling the entire product that was built on. Later, some other company got an injunction and proved that you could do that. But but that was this moment, because I remember the feeling in my chest when I walked in there, like the thing I'm trying to do, I'm just failing at miserably. Fortunately, it had a good turnout. LinkedIn is now a partner of ours. They invested in our Series C, so kind of turned the tables there. But it was a tough moment that really put that to the test.
You were prepared a season early for what you would really reap and sow as rewards. You just didn't know that, so that was good. That was early preparation. Okay, so what we're going to do now is open it up. Rebecca, if you want to come help with a couple of mic runs, that'd be great. Anyone in the audience have questions for our amazing panelist? Way there in the back? You're going to have to meet me halfway. Come on, buddy.
Come on up here.
Come on up to the stage.
Come on in.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I just grabbed my drink. Gosh. So I had a question. So my name is Ryan Johns. I'm with Scaled. Hey, Kyle. We know each other. So I have a question for you, Kyle. Sure. You mentioned you being very people-centric. You mentioned that you have a tough time telling folks that they don't fit the culture and it was on you. Like, what do you do differently than to, I guess, assess a person early or determine how good of a cultural fit they are? Like, what measures do you put into place to evaluate that?
So we have a pretty intense process to join our club, and we have a model internally that says it's our clubhouse. And so we've developed a whole series of interviews. In fact, Blake Snodgrass has helped to develop this, and he's one of the best recruiters in Atlanta. We had to eat our own dog food. Right, and we had to, because we're constantly challenging people like Kyle's hiring assumptions and what are you guys doing, and we weren't eating our own dog food. So I think by the time candidates get to the decision point, we've assessed them, we've examined them, right, and we've challenged them. In fact, we have a new hire here, Miss Megan, who went through a pretty deep process, and we eliminate that through a pretty deep process. And I know that goes against sometimes hire quick, fire quick, but for us, that's just too painful. It's too painful to train somebody when you know they're not going to work out. So we would hire carefully and thoughtfully, right, with some volume, but carefully and thoughtfully.
That's awesome. Who else has a question?
I'll add something to that last question. When you talk about having the tough conversations, I think a switch flipped for me when I realized that when someone is not fitting into either the values or the timeline or the present moment of the company, that while it's difficult to take someone that you love and care about and that means something to you and have those tough conversations, that's important for them to receive that, right? Because if they're not working out in that moment, then they need to be freed up to go somewhere else and to make an impact and to be the best that they can possibly be. And so I think that mindset really helped me. I was doing the difficult conversations wrongly before, but when I started to realize that was, the mentality to take, it made things a lot easier.
Yeah, I would actually completely empathize and agree with that one. I've been on both sides of the conversation of, are you really happy, and what makes you happy, and where do you want to be? And they're like, oh, thank God you said this. I hate this job. I want out, right? Maybe not quite that dramatic, but they're like just waiting for the window, right? And I think that comes from, again, passion, purpose, and connecting, and the empathy of like, I'm not here to squeeze unhappiness out of you, right? So help me help you figure out what really drives you. And I think that's super awesome. And I've had leaders do that for me in the past. So again, I say I've been on both sides of that. So if there's no more questions, not last call for alcohol, but last call for questions, okay, right back here. The bar is still open.
Hi, I'm Gladys Aguirre. My company is Ignite Within. And when you think about the future of work, and they talk about the cycle changes every 18 months now, what are some things that you think that employees need to consider, or what you need to consider when you're looking at employees and the skills that they need when you think about the future of work, where we're going to be when it comes to work and leadership and all of those things, right? Because it's changing, and it changes quickly. What do we need to be doing to be ready for that?
Yeah, so I think there are some fundamental skills that are pretty timeless. And I find at SalesLoft that I'm always looking for great writers, right? Doesn't matter whether you're on the sales team, the recruiting and talent team, the marketing team. If you can tell stories and share passion and transfer energy through writing, that's a critical trait and talent. Now, you might be able to want to know the different mediums or the mobile applications or ways to put that out into the internet so that people can see it and be impacted on it or impacted by it. But I think that's one that, it's a lot of times it's just the fundamentals of what we've always cared about, but applied in the new setting. So that's just the first thing that came to mind for me.
I think it's pretty obvious that the pace of change is accelerating. And so what we look for are people that are adaptable, and they can talk about situations that they've been in, tasks that they've been given, where the situation, the tables have turned on them quickly, and how do they adapt to that? If you're talking about preparing for the future of the acceleration is just going to get, from what I can see in the technology companies that I talk to and the transformation that I see in multiple organizations that I have I'm fortunate to get engaged with, they're moving very, very, very quickly. They're changing their infrastructures very, very quickly. They're changing what they do quickly. And I don't think there's ever going to be a day where robots dominate our craft at all. I think they're going to help us out a ton. But ultimately, the ability to adapt and to accept the fact that change is constant. There are no static ways of doing things. However, there are static principles. Right? And doing right by the customer never gets old, So I think if you look for adaptability with strong principles, I think that's a pretty good start.
I love the comment about the robots, and I agree. Although I did hear a statement, and I think it was the gentleman who runs Y Combinator, Paul, I forgot his last name, and he said there's going to be two jobs in the future: those that the robots do, and those when the people tell the robots what to do. And we see that today, even with salespeople or marketers. They're taking their talents and their skills and they're applying them, and then they're using systems to send that message out or to accomplish that task or to follow up with that process. And so that is one perspective I think is really critical, and certainly something I'll tell my daughter as she grows up.
So I'll wrap up on this note to that question, Gladys. That was wonderful. Thank you. I remember early on in my sales career, I had a chance to listen to Bernie Marcus, who was one of the founders of Home Depot, who now owns or founded not only the Georgia Aquarium, but the Marcus Foundation. And it looks like the other day when I was passing the Grady Curve, he's now on the Marcus Trauma Center and some other things here in Atlanta. He was 74 years old at the time, so this is probably at least 10 years ago. And he came out and he said, every morning when my feet hit the floor, I'm excited about what I'm going to learn today. And I'm not just looking at you, Gladys, for that question, but I would encourage everybody in this room, how do you stay relevant and competitive in an ever-changing world? You wake up every morning excited about what you're going to learn today. And the minute you stop learning, that's on you. Because at 74 years old, the man who's a multi-billionaire, still wakes up every morning excited about what he's going to learn. So I want to thank our two amazing fireside chat guests, the Kyles, Kyle Squared. You all are awesome.